So today we're diving into one of the most anticipated shooters of the year, Battlefield 6. If you're a longtime Battlefield fan or an FPS fanatic, or you're just looking for the next big multiplayer shooter to pick up, then this is the video for you. We're going to take a look at the big question, should you buy Battlefield 6? And now the game's been out for about a month, and in today's video we'll walk through the gameplay experience, the campaign mode, the gun feel and the mechanics, and yes, we'll also examine the brand new Battle Royale mode called Redsec, which is rising in popularity every single day. Now, by the end of this video, I'll give you my verdict, and again, this is my personal opinion, on whether I think it's worth spending your hard-earned cash on Battlefield 6. So let's talk about it. Now, as we jump in, a big thank you to EA for sponsoring today's video. First off, a quick refresher for anyone who hasn't been following closely. Battlefield 6 is developed by Battlefield Studios, a collaboration between DICE, Ripple, Criterion, and a couple of others, and is published by EA. It launched around October 10th this year on PS5, Xbox, Xbox Series S, and PC. It promises ultimate all-out warfare, massive maps, full vehicular combat. If you've played Battlefield before, you know what it is. If you haven't, it's basically full-on war mode in a video game. Now, this isn't just another Battlefield Lite, so if you're kind of concerned on that, it's not, so don't worry. From the marketing and obviously my first impressions, it's kind of aiming high, but as always, it's the promise and delivering the experience that are two different things, right? So let's start with the core, the multiplayer, because for a lot of people, that's what Battlefield is all about. Now, with the map scale and destruction, there's early footage of large-scale maps with multiple combat zones across environments, but when you get into the game, I didn't actually realize initially how much destruction there was going to be. It's back in a massive way. The whole environment is destructible. You can blow through walls, you can change the terrain, you can level buildings, you can knock giant cranes over, which is ridiculous as well, and just create all new paths to get through and progress through the map. Now, that's kind of been a hallmark of the franchise, and they're just emphasizing it as much as possible. And it's kind of a strong positive because there aren't really many games that actually do that. Now, with the game modes, you have the returning fan favorites like Conquest, Breakthrough, Rush. Plus, you have some faster modes like TDM, Squad Deathmatch, Domination King of the Hill, if you like your Call of Duty style smaller maps. And on top of that, we actually have a new mode called Escalation that's been revealed with two teams where they fight to capture strategic control points. Now, the gunplay and the vehicles, that's a big part of any FPS game. In multiplayer, you'll be engaging in infantry versus infantry, of course, but also you have tanks, helicopters, jets, large armies of people that you have to fight your way through. And depending which game mode you're playing, sometimes it feels absolutely impossible to break through the wall of defenders. Now, the feel of vehicles, infantry, and map destruction is all of Battlefield's identity. Now, from playing the game, here's one thing that I've found, and I think that for me personally, it's not something that I like, but I think if you're a huge fan of Battlefield, it's something you can definitely get around, and that is the tanks. Now, for me, I come from a Call of Duty background. I also love Star Wars Battlefront. However, the one thing I didn't like in Battlefront is the same thing that I don't really like in Battlefield. But again, it's personal opinion. It's nothing against the game. The tanks and the vehicles tend to make it almost impossible to progress through certain parts of the map. However, I find that in Battlefield, the engineer class obviously does have the ability to, I guess, level any sort of tank and create an opportunity. But the problem is nobody really wants to play the engineer role and actually take out the enemy tank. So there's a ton of people playing the medic, there's a ton of people playing the scout, but no one really plays the assault or actually the engineer as well, which, I mean, the assault class I can understand because there's not really a whole lot going for them. But with the engineer role, I think your whole responsibility should be to take out enemy vehicles. And even when people are playing engineer, it just doesn't feel like they're doing it sometimes. At least in Breakthrough, that's what I find. So it makes it really difficult to progress because it is such a linear map style, similar to how Galactic Assault used to feel in Battlefront 2 when the enemy had a tank that was just not being targeted. Something kind of like that. But the tanks in Battlefield, they're actually a lot harder to destroy than the ones in Battlefront. So we'll see how I go once I play the game a little bit more, but that's, again, just one of my first impressions. Now, the performance side, one thing that's interesting to note is that the team at EA, or I guess at DICE or Battlefield Studios that are developing this, they've indicated that they're focusing on more of a performance and fluid gameplay over the ultra high-end visuals, which in the past, they've kind of been known for the visual aspect of the game. But this time they've decided to not include ray tracing at launch, which, they can keep the performance high, but I think they'll eventually add it at some point. Now, that kind of bodes well for you if you play on PC or you want a really high frame rate, but it does tone back a little bit of the wow factor with the actual environment and the visual of the game. Now, my impressions and verdict on the gameplay fundamentals. The gameplay foundation's solid. Like, it's really good. I enjoy it. It plays smoothly. It runs well. If you like Battlefield and, the super large scale warfare, this is pretty much a return to form from DICE. Now, the destruction, the vehicles, the global maps, all of that, it's all really, really good. But and the overall experience for me has been really enjoyable so far. However, I haven't had as much fun playing Battlefield alone. The most time I've had the most fun playing this game so far is when I squadded up with a few fellow creators and we got together and we formed a squad and actually played the roles as they were intended to play. I ran the medic and I feel like I was defibbing them a whole lot and pretty much the entire game, but that was my role, right? And as much as I would expect a little bit less of the dying from my teammates, they definitely did their part too, and it was a lot of fun. So there's good things and there's some things that I would love to be improved. But again, that's not a gripe with the game. It's probably more so around the player base. When you have medics that don't want to actually revive, again, that's not EA or DICE's fault. That's just the players in the game. Now, if you buy the game primarily for a large scale multiplayer chaos mode, you're going to be getting your money's worth. That's just a given. Battlefield always tends to deliver on the large scale modes. If you're hoping for something that's drastically new though, or reinvented multiplayer in some kind of way, the baseline may feel a little bit familiar and probably not so different to previous Battlefield titles. Next up, let's talk about the campaign. And, there's often a debate about the campaign on whether or not it should be included in these Battlefield games. The campaign in Battlefield 6 is, supposed to be a globe-trotting experience, or at least that's how they described it. 9 adrenaline-charged missions, part of the story of Dagger 13, which is a US Marine Raider squad fighting against the private military corp Pax Armada. Now, the settings include a couple of the different maps, but in theory, you have these really big set pieces, major destruction, and like that kind of blockbuster feel that you'd expect from a campaign mode. However, I've played a couple of the missions now, and it just doesn't feel fun. Like, it's just kind of there. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've put the campaign in, you do the things the guide tells you to do, and you just kind of walk your way through it. The enemies aren't really, anything to write home about. They kind of just run out into the middle of the open and fire at you. But again, that's kind of to be expected in like a slower campaign style mode. Whereas if you really want the fast paced action that you want to feel like you're actually in the war, then multiplayer is probably going to be better for you. Now, if you're actually thinking of buying the game predominantly for the campaign and the narrative, I would say probably don't. Again, it is large scale, it's cinematic, it looks cool, but it kind of just leaves a lot to be desired, and you just end up playing through these couple of missions and then you go, now what? Whereas if you're looking at playing, the FPS side of the game, the multiplayer side of the game, I should say, I think you're going to be really excited by this version of Battlefield. Now, one of the most important aspects for FPS players is how the weapons feel, how the movement is, the recoil, the class mechanics, and what meta builds and things that you can actually create, especially that there are a lot of people coming over from Call of Duty now playing Battlefield. That loadout and meta build is kind of making its way into Battlefield. And I think it's a little bit refreshing, but people will also argue that it'll make it feel just like Call of Duty. So there is a fine balance there that the creators and the developers are probably trying to manage, but I think it's for the best. I think it adds variety, it adds replayability, and it gives a little bit more for, I guess, content creators like myself to experience with and play with. But in no shooter, no matter how big the map or shiny the explosion, if the guns and the weapons don't feel good, you're going to notice and you're going to feel bad about it. Now, the classes and specializations I've already talked to a little bit, so I won't go into them too much, but I'm just going to say if you are playing a specific class, try to play that role and do the things that it's intended to do. Because if you're not going to do it, why play that role at all when you can just switch off to another one and actually do the thing that you're trying to do? Speaking of the weapon handling, from the reveal footage and the early gameplay, the weapons looked like they've got that heavy feel, and I think it does deliver in the game that they're actually difficult to control if you don't have certain attachments unlocked or you don't have certain things on the gun. It's not like Call of Duty where everything can be managed in terms of recoil or everything feels super easy to actually use. There is a level of skill, and I found myself having to adapt to how Battlefield actually plays and how the gunplay actually feels to get a good idea of how this game works and how to become better. It's not like you can just pick up any sniper rifle and actually just point and click. You have to learn zeroing, you have to learn bullet drop. And of course, I know there is things like the rangefinder that make that a lot easier. But in the beginning, I didn't know that. I had to adapt and I had to learn and I had to figure all these things out, as well as different recoil patterns on every weapon. Some things are better than others in terms of, when you're playing the assault class, if you didn't know that you have to switch off certain attachments or get rid of the shotgun, you would find yourself running out of ammo every 5 minutes. Every couple of enemies you encounter, you're going to have to respawn because you've got no ammo left. And again, there's no one resupplying you. Those are just things that I had to learn from my experience. Now, I have heard a few people say that there are certain features from older Battlefield games that are great, like the large scale maps, or there are actually vehicles missing or things that they want added. But I think overall it feels really good so far from what I've played. Again, I've mainly played Breakthrough and Conquest and a little bit of the campaign. I've only played one game of Redsec, so what I'm going to go into now is that mode and my first initial experience with it. But overall, I think the gun feel and the gameplay in general are really strong in Battlefield 6. I think the core systems are super satisfying. If you're an FPS fan, you're likely going to enjoy the weapon impact, the variety of weapons, and, vehicles. They kind of go either way. You either love them or you hate them. The only caveat I think to say with Battlefield 6's multiplayer mode is that it's not extremely groundbreaking. So if you're hoping for a complete reinvention of FPS mechanics, you might not find it here. But for high quality premium shooter experience, I think it definitely hits the mark. Now, for the big addition, the Battle Royale mode called Redsec, in many shooters, BR has become a big piece of the puzzle, right? Battlefield 6 brings its own new mode called Redsec. We need to discuss whether it's actually a strong reason to buy or a reason to be cautious in terms of purchasing. Now, Redsec is a free-to-play Battle Royale mode built on Battlefield scale and destruction. The Verge, it feels a massive map, with up to 100 players, points of loot, exploration, the typical BR kind of feel that you're going to go for, right? Now, for existing Battlefield players who want large-scale multiplayer, this gives you a different way to actually enjoy and play it, and a better way, I guess, to squad up and actually utilize your different classes that you're playing as and use the abilities of those classes in a different way. Now, Redsec could provide really big replay value, which is something I've found personally Battlefield has struggled with. I've struggled to actually stay engaged and stay enjoying Battlefield after sort of a few weeks of actually playing it. I think Redsec can potentially do that for me. Now, I'm making a video on my other channel for actually the Platinum Trophy, which is why I haven't played much Redsec yet. I'm trying to get through all of those other trophies in multiplayer first before I tackle the Redsec mode, just to make it a little bit easier for my editing experience. But I will definitely be getting into more Redsec because I love Battle Royales. I played a lot of Warzone in the past. I played a lot of Apex Legends, and Battlefield's Redsec mode is no different. I think I'm going to get a lot of time spent in this mode. Now, I know there's definitely reasons for people to be concerned that the Battle Royale is going to take away from the actual multiplayer itself, and that's a very real possibility that a lot of people end up playing Redsec and don't actually play the multiplayer. But one thing I do find is that you're probably going to have to play quite a lot of multiplayer to level up the weapons that are actually in Redsec. And it's similar to the way Call of Duty does their model, right? People don't necessarily have to buy the multiplayer version of the game, but to level up your guns fast enough in Redsec to stay up with the always changing meta, you kind of have to have the multiplayer requirements, or at least all the guns leveled up, which is easier to do in multiplayer as well. I think Battlefield's probably going to follow that blueprint a little bit, and you're going to end up in the same boat. Now, my verdict on Redsec. I lean positive here. Redsec, I think, adds real value to Battlefield 6. I think it adds replayability and something different from just the core multiplayer and the kind of average campaign that we're getting. But it's also, a new mode for people to try. Maybe people that have played Battlefield in the past and kind of just stuck to multiplayer, that didn't venture off and try Warzone or Apex or any of the BR stuff, they might start to venture across into it because it is, a Battlefield game mode, right? So once you get that, then you build on it and you get more people playing it every other day. So pros and cons of this, I think the pros are that the maps are huge, the combat feels really good in terms of the weapons, and the destruction is really cool. There's a really good, strong multiplayer foundation with a good mix of modes and roles. The gun feel is great. The class system, when used correctly, is really, really satisfying. But I think the Redsec mode is what's ultimately going to keep Battlefield moving forward. I think the performance is really good. I haven't had any sort of issues. And again, I've been playing on PS5, so that could just be my experience. Maybe PC players have had other issues. But I think it's been a really good start for the way that Battlefield 6 has performed. It's also broken records. That's worth noting. Over 7 million copies sold in the first couple of days. That is nothing to be snarky about. And the fact that it's been out for about a month now and I'm still itching to play it every chance that I get, that kind of shows me that this is the best Battlefield we've had in a long time. Because, like I said, I tend to play it for 2 weeks and just get bored and over it and don't really find my way making my way back to it. So, now, the cons, on the other hand, the campaign is lackluster and kind of disappointing, but, that's to be expected. This is a multiplayer game where it's heavily focused on multiplayer, and they kind of just throw a campaign in there for those people that want it. I feel like a few people that have been playing Battlefield for years and years might have certain issues with things being missing, but that's kind of the, I guess, allure of a season pass or doing the game in seasons with a battle pass where you can unlock other things along the way. It adds, again, replayability and a long service to the game. So when you add all those things together, I don't think it's actually really a big problem. Now, I think for this game, long-term support is key to keep it feeling fresh. You're going to have to continue to add weapons, maps, vehicles potentially, and a whole bunch of other things to keep people around and playing it, especially the fact that Black Ops 7 is just around the corner and you have another major FPS title to compete with. They're going to have to do something to keep their players around. So here's the moment of truth, right? Should you buy Battlefield 6? Well, it kind of depends. If you're a longtime Battlefield fan and a multiplayer lover, I'd say absolutely go for it. You're going to love it. Give Redsec a try. I think you'll really actually enjoy it. But if you just like the multiplayer, like large scale modes, I think you're in a really good spot to enjoy this game. And I think you're pretty safe to purchase it if you haven't already. Now, if you're mainly an FPS multiplayer gamer, but you haven't really ventured into the Battlefield franchise, I'd say yes, but maybe do a little bit more research rather than just watching one video. Maybe go and watch some live streams and a few people actually play it before you make your decision. But I think you're relatively safe to purchase it, and I think you'll get a good kick out of it, at least for a while. Now, if you're a single player gamer or you like campaigns and narrative driven stuff, you'll get a really like cinematic experience, but I just don't think it lasts long enough to be worth the price tag. So maybe if it ever goes on sale, or maybe you can pick it up for free at some point through some sort of promotion, I would say grab it then, because I think you're going to play through the campaign and just be like, okay, I don't have much to do now. And I don't really like Battle Royale or multiplayer. So I just kind of wasted money if you actually bought it. Now, if you don't like BR modes or you just like games with massive live service seasons, you can still buy it for the multiplayer, but bear in mind, like, they're going to look at probably leaning into Redsec more and more as they go along. And you're going to have that season-based model that they use in Call of Duty. So just be prepared for those things as well. Now, if the price is still full price at the time this video goes out and, you're kind of waiting for a price drop, I would say that's 100% valid. I think there is definitely, value for people that really enjoy multiplayer FPS games and are around the Battlefield franchise to just go out and pay full price for it. But if you're not sure and you're kind of on the fence, or maybe you're a Call of Duty guy and you're not really sure if you want to switch and try Battlefield, there's always the opportunity to sort of sit on it for a little bit, wait, see if it actually goes on sale, and then pick it up at that point. So I think at that point, you kind of cover all your bases with all the different types of players. Is Battlefield 6 perfect? No. There's definitely some critiques and some things I could go into that are relatively minor. But overall, I think it's had a really good opportunity for the launch and to maximize the amount of players based on the timing of the launch, because, there's not really a Call of Duty experience that is taking everyone by storm right now. So I think they've actually captured a larger audience than they intended to. So my final verdict is yes, I would recommend buying Battlefronts. I would recommend buying Battlefield 6, especially if you're into the multiplayer shooter genre, or you just love FPS games or large scale game modes, things like that. I think you should really definitely pick this up. If you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you did. Leave a like down below and comment what your favorite part about this is. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game as well, if there's anything you'd like to add to. But with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again to EA for sponsoring today's video, and I will see you guys next time.